This is the early prediction tier list for hero power in Overwatch 2 Season 2. With the balance updates, we're going to be seeing some pretty big warping of the meta that started taking place near the end of Season 1. It seems Blizzard is keeping to their word about really trying to shake things up and make them look different from season to season and not just aesthetically, although the Greek god theme is pretty cool. Christmas time is here and Santa has left in your stocking an easy and quick way to get to GM. There has never been a better time to get your membership to GameLeap.com. You can use code SANTA at checkout and get 50% off. Not only that, not only will you get access to everything, but 10 people will be picked for a free VOD review from our top coaches. That is an insane amount of value, so hurry up and click on the link right now and get your membership today. In any case, let's start breaking down who the strongest heroes are right now, and as per usual, we are going to go role by role and start with the D tier. Our first role is going to be tank, and sadly there is a new king, or should I say queen, of the D tier. Junker Queen. I really wish I had an answer for why they made her hitbox bigger and overall nerfed her. She was already bad, why reduce the duration on her ult even if it charges quicker, and why reduce her shout by only 1 second? The passive change was also a total joke, and she finds herself being stuck competing against tanks with more damage output, pick potential, mobility, and survivability, which leaves her as a firm D tier pick. Next on our list is going to be the C tier Zarya, who has definitely taken quite the tumble from the early days of Overwatch 2 when her bubbles were stronger. While she is not terrible, she doesn't really compete with the power that the tanks above her can bring with their far superior utility. She can carry, but she just doesn't have a loaded enough kit. Our second C tier tank is going to be Wrecking Ball, and Ball is definitely worse than Zarya, but better than JQ, which puts him in this weird in-between of C to D tier. His damage output and utility are pretty low compared to what other high mobility tanks offer, and really his best case use is as a stall hero coming back from spawn. Because of this, he is going to stay at our C tier for now. Moving on up into the B tier, we have the surprisingly effective pocket pick, Orisa. Orisa is pretty strong, she just lacks the ability to help her team push. Her biggest strength is in the pressure she applies to enemy tanks, with solid damage, CC, tons of sustain, and the ability to push them around with her javelin spin. Her glaring weakness just comes from the fact that she cannot do anything against snipers, for example, and that leaves her team in a vulnerable position most of the time. Our next B tier hero is sadly going to be the new guy, Ramatra. This honestly shocks me, but his weaknesses are very prevalent. He doesn't have the sustained pushing power of the A tier heroes. He has okay damage, but really his lack of mobility makes it difficult for him to be effective on a lot of maps. He is also pretty weak against Hog, who is a fantastic pick at the moment, between his stuns, which Ramatra is vulnerable to, and the fact that Whole Hog is a fantastic hard counter to Ramatra's ultimate. In a different meta, he has a lot of potential, but not this one. Moving up into our A tier, we first have Sigma, and Sig is an excellent defensive hero and a decent offensive one. His shield is one of the best in the game, and he has tons of pressure with his ranged damage. He also has plenty of self-sustain and playmaking potential between his kinetic grasp, which works like a defense matrix, his rock, which is one of the few stuns left in the game, and his ultimate, which is certainly an S tier ult. He's overall good at what he does and okay at what he doesn't, which makes him a solid tank. Our next A tier tank is going to be Reinhardt, who struggles in the same way as Ramatra does with high grounds and mobility, but has proven to be quite the effective space maker since he has a much better shield. His close range damage is formidable, and on a lot of maps he can close distance very easily with the help of a Lucio, who is a fantastic pick right now. Next in our A tier is going to be D.Va, who has a very strong presence damage wise, and with good perception can make massive defensive plays with her Matrix. A good D.Va is a nightmare to lots of heroes in OW2 on any role. Matrixing heals can make a support's job very annoying to do. You can eat ultimates, your damage is fantastic and can pressure out lots of tanks while being quite healthy yourself. Overall, a solid hero that performs as well as the player who is using her does. Our final A tier tank is going to be Winston, who was a previous favorite in the meta pre-Roadhog. Winston is a great space maker with his shield and his burst damage from his land. He has the ability to engage from most areas of the map, and the bubble he places serves to both assist his teammates who are diving with him by giving them some much needed sustain, but also to split enemy dive targets off from their heals, since heals do not typically go through shields. He is a solid choice on the tank line right now. Moving into our S tier, we have a brand new face who previously found himself at the D tier, a true zero to hero come up story, Doomfist. Doom's changes are arguably a big overtune, but regardless, he will now find himself much more able to get steady value, and honestly, despite him being a bad baseline tank previously, many good Doomfists were capable of getting tons of value. Now with the buffs, he is going to get far more consistent value and have much more playmaking potential. S tier. Finally, we have a familiar face in the S tier, Roadhog, who remains as probably still the strongest tank in the game, although it is close. He simply has a ton of brute strength with his weapon, and his breather, which not only reduces damage intake by 50%, but also heals him for 300 HP. Add that into his pick potential from his hook, and you have a truly nasty tank. His ultimate pairs exceedingly well with Kiriko's and can win a ton of fights in lots of different ways, even on its own. Hog is a beast right now, there is no denying, and he counters most of the good tanks, which has only made him stronger. Okay, moving on to the next role, there are a lot of DPSs, so we're going to try to move things quickly. We start things off with Genji at the C tier. He doesn't have enough damage or utility in the current meta. He can be alright, but there are simply better options, as with most of the heroes in the C tier. Our next hero is Sim, and while she did receive some nice buffs, they simply will not be enough to boost her ranking all that much in the game. She doesn't have the punch that other heroes have, nor the range, and definitely not the mobility. Her best case use is teleporting out of spawn before switching to someone else. Cassidy. Cassidy is honestly a coin flip. If you are mechanically better than your opponents, he can definitely destroy, even harder with the Mercy Pocket. However, that doesn't make up for the fact that he has a horrendously one-dimensional kit. C for Cassidy. Next is Ashe, and she is seeming to just get worse and worse. With ranged one-shot headshot heroes or close-range one-shot heroes being meta, she struggles to really find anywhere to play. Her head hitbox is simply too easy to target even for heroes like Kiriko, and Ashe's inability to one-shot or produce consistent value is definitely showing in this meta, C tier. Up next is Widowmaker. She starts off our B tier. Widow is super good on a lot of the maps in the pool this season. Rialto, Circuit Royale, and etc. are all strong sightline maps, and Widow can absolutely shut the game down against the standard Roadhog and Doom metas. She is super capable with the right maps, and she lands solidly at the B tier. Mei isn't too bad, she just doesn't wow me, but when you're running Lucio setups and going straight into the enemy team, walls can be very nice to lock enemies in place for your death ball. She struggles elsewhere, however, which leaves her as just a B tier pick for me. Solid, but not great. Sombra is another hero who has fallen from grace, but is pretty capable as far as the current tank meta goes. She can definitely mess with Doom and Hog quite well due to their lack of shields and vulnerability when they're using cooldowns, which can be interrupted by a hack. Her mobility and invisibility make her a pretty good diver, so she stays at a solid B tier. She just doesn't do enough damage to be any higher. Up next is Torb, and Torb is probably the most neutral, simply decent hero in the game. His turret is okay, but not great. He compensates for not having one-shot potential by being extremely sturdy and capable of dueling at range with his E, which stops him from being one-shot by snipers. He has okay mobility, good close range damage, good spam damage, but doesn't really exceed at any one thing. Solid B tier. Soldier's up next, and he has dropped down a tier for me since he simply cannot hang against Doom and Hog metas. He sometimes can do decent damage, especially if the enemy team is worse than the player or does not focus him down hard enough, but he doesn't have the pick potential necessary to be anything other than an okay choice, so he sits at the B tier. Next is Pharah, and she is a solid hero with good sustain due to her aerial nature and solid damage output. A pocketed Pharah is capable of getting a lot of value, especially since hit scans are mostly weak right now. I suspect I'll be moving Pharah up a tier when we get into the halfway point of the season, but she's decent all around and for now sits at the B tier. Junkrat. Junk is an annoyingly strong choice in a lot of chokes, as he can shut them down with ease due to his insane spam damage. His mines give him both good mobility for escape as well as good disruption with their boop. On top of that, they also provide him with a powerful one-shot combo on unsuspecting targets. He's pretty decent, but not versatile enough, so he stays at the B tier for me. Also in the B tier, we have Bastion. He is a solid DPS right now, especially with the buffs to his transfiguration. The no-shield nature of the meta tanks right now allows for him to do a lot of damage to them and apply a lot of pressure. And in addition to all of that, they gave some buffs to his ultimate, which was in some serious need of love. He still has mobility problems, however, and is easy to push out, so I'm going to leave him here at the B tier. Solid, but not fantastic. Next up is Hanzo, and Hanzo kind of falls into the same situation with good one-shot potential and good range and spam, but he is even more susceptible to dives than Junkrat is. Hanzo's optimal consistent range is just too close, and that really makes him struggle against mobile metas. You can't ignore the pick potential though, so for me, he is at the B tier. Moving on into the A tier, we start things off with Echo, and Echo is the better version of Pharah right now. Comparable spam damage, but with faster aerial mobility and far more one-shot and burst potential with her sticky bombs and laser. She is annoyingly strong and definitely a solid choice for good Echo players right now, especially on control maps. A tier choice. Our only other A tier choice is sadly still going to be Sojourn. Wow, was she hit hard. I think she'll struggle more with no one-shot, little compensatory damage buffs, more fall off, and less critical damage in general. However, her kit is still very loaded and she can can still get pretty solid damage. We may even see more mercy pockets for her since that brings her one shot back. Her mobility is fantastic and she has decent damage output still, which makes her an A tier choice. Moving on into our S tier, we start things off with Tracer. She has received a minor damage buff from before that is going to certainly help her damage output, and in the right hands she can absolutely be devastating. She fits very well into this meta. She's hyper mobile, a great 1v1er, she's self-sufficient, and she can carry pretty hard, so this leaves her as an S tier choice. Our final DPS in the S tier is going to be Reaper, and Reaper has not received any changes, so he's still just as potent as he used to be, if not more so with the nerfs to Sojourn. His high close range damage and tanky nature allow for him to stay in the fight and pop off much longer than other close range DPSs, and his ability to chunk down tank health makes him an asset. With the reduction in Sojourn's damage, he'll be able to be that much more aggressive, and that makes him strong in the death ball. My only other S tier DPS hero right now, and he is extremely powerful. Going into the support role, we start off with Brig, who simply cannot hang. She doesn't have any real utility for her team, and her healing is pretty bad to boot. She really needs some kind of utility buff. Even giving her stun back would be fine, but for now she is a hard D tier choice. Moving up into our C tier, we have Moira, who genuinely just doesn't do enough. Yeah, she can heal and do some damage, but when you compare her to the new heroes or supports that have walls of text regarding how much utility they have and things they do, she just doesn't really compare. Kiriko can do everything Moira does, but better and with more utility on top of it. Jumping up to our B tier, we have Mercy, who got a pointless buff, but is still a pretty meh choice at the moment. Now, she isn't bad, particularly because of how strong a pocketed Sojourn is, but you sacrifice a lot to run Mercy in this meta. She's pretty much a never pick compared to Lucio or Kiriko, but she can be okay, so she's B tier. Baptiste. Bap simply does not survive in the close range he needs to play in. Sure, you can play him at range, but then your heals are less consistent, they take longer to travel, as does your lamp, and it's overall just going to be a harder position, especially since you don't have horizontal mobility to keep up with your team if they decide to push. At close range, he is squishy and easy to kill, which leaves him at the B tier. Also in the B tier, we have Zen. The only time I'd really consider running Zen is defending escort or hybrid maps, as he can use his range to apply pressure from difficult to dive positions while contributing Discord Orb, which is really strong in this meta. His ult is also one of the strong defensive ultimates in the game, so it can be used to help chew down the time bank for the offense. As for the A tier, my only A tier choice for support is Ana, and she kind of falls in the same vein as Zen, where she can play at super far range to get her value, except her healing is far superior to Zen. This means that you can get away with not trading a Lucio for her, and her abilities can, in the right situations, get more value. She still is hard countered by Kiriko, who can always remove at least one of Ana's playmaking abilities, which leaves her stuck in the A tier. She also cannot survive well in close range encounters, so things like control maps are a no-go. Moving into our final S tier heroes, we have Kiriko. She receives some solid nerfs, but is going to remain as one of the best supports in the game right now. Her healing is spectacular. Her ultimate is still one of the strongest, if not the strongest. Her kunai do loads of damage and give her lots of pit potential. She has all kinds of mobility, and cleanse has actually been buffed to be even better. She is extremely powerful and lands an easy spot at the S tier. Our final support hero is Lucio, and this should still not be a surprise. Speed boost is extremely strong and allows for him to give his team a much needed boost to their initiation and fighting abilities. His boop gives him utility to protect himself and his weak teammates, and he has insane mobility that allows for him to be pretty self-reliant. His ultimate is also absolutely crucial for turning fights that are possibly lost, as well as managing ult economy in Overwatch. Lucio is an easy S tier pick. That is going to do it for our Season 2 tier list predictions. Be sure to like and subscribe for more educational guides and news content, and I will see you all again very soon. Take care and peace. Christmas time is here, and Santa has left in your stocking an easy and quick way to get to GM. There has never been a better time to get your membership to GameLeap.com. You can use code SANTA at checkout and get 50% off. Not only that, not only will you get access to everything, but 10 people will be picked for a free VOD review from our top coaches. That is an insane amount of value, so hurry up and click on the link right now and get your membership today.